I'm calling this meeting back to order. And we are on item number 8, information. Number C, New Hanover County Schools Fee Schedule, Appendix G. Rick Holliday.
Thank you. Mrs. Quattlebaum asked me to bring this tonight as you all have requested. The information that you have about this is because you requested to review the fee structures. And what we've provided to you there is the fee structure for both inside and outside spaces of our properties. The last review of this fee schedule for outside spaces for nonprofits occurred in October of 2013 at a policy committee meeting. The recommended changes were approved at the November 2013 board meeting. At that time, the board voted to eliminate the fee for open play areas like playgrounds of elementary schools, for nonprofits that are using them for youth recreation. The last time the fee schedules as a whole have been reviewed and changed was at that time. That was November 2013. So you have all that information in front of you for your consideration, Madam Chair.
I have a question. This is for information, is that correct?
That's correct.
And I know we looked at it, it's 2013, but we need to look at it in detail because Hanover or Brogdon Hall is listed with no air conditioning, and the fee probably should change if we are now using the air conditioning.
Good
Also,
point.
we don't have Lakeside High School.
No, we're sitting on what's left of it. Yes, ma'am.
So I don't know that we can offer that.
Yeah, we can make some changes.
Do we have, we don't have control of the facility at Virgo any longer, do we?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so we need to look at all
A
of
lot of cleaning up. Yes, ma'am.
and look at the fees.
Yes, ma'am.
The reason I actually requested for this to be put on the agenda was I had some individuals approach me and ask me to just to take a look at it. We have some youth groups that were wanting to use the basketball courts in our gyms, and what they were saying is that they were being told that it was about $90 an hour to use the basketball courts for our students. These are groups that would include our students. And so I wanted to see what we could do in order to bring that cost down, or just open that discussion up amongst board members. I know that we had talked about outside groups versus inside groups before, and that's what, and I know we're juggling, trying to cover our costs, but it just seemed like we were sort of discouraging the very folks that we want to bring into our, from the community, especially our students. So if you could, Dr. Holliday, give us a rundown of how much it really would be to use one of our gyms for like an hour for a student group.
You want me to look into that? Or
Yes.
Absolutely.
But I think that's a germane part of the discussion if we're talking about, especially this time of the year. Basketball is, I think, still ongoing, but coming close to an end. We've looked at the outside field usage, but I don't know that we looked as much into what it costs to use our basketball courts. And I am of the opinion I would like to be as open as we can be for our student groups, our adult. I know that what we had looked at in 2013 was dividing up between student groups and adult groups, and trying to be as mindful as we could about making sure our students had access. So, but again, I would like to have that discussion with the board. So that was
So what you're asking, Madam Chair, is for us to determine the actual cost of using a gym. There will be some difference in cost, as you know, so we'll try to cost them out, the big ones versus the small ones and those kinds of things.
Well, I'd like you to come back and tell us what the actual cost is, and then I
Sure,
think we should have a
absolutely.
discussion
Yes,
as a
ma'am.
board as to what we want to do, to see if we're gonna, maybe subsidize that, or, kind of what we want to do, based on that information. So is that acceptable to
Sure.
the board?
It is, and I think we have the opportunity, if we do that, because I know there's a lot of groups around town, Halo Hoops, all those, and they're begging for space from churches. But if we can offer some of our school space for, I'm just taking basketball because we're talking about basketball, say, listen, here's what we'd be willing to do to let you use this court on Saturdays, because that's when Halo Hoops is. And in return, maybe we can talk to them about getting some spaces for some kids that don't have the ability to play Halo Hoops, or something like that. Just
Sure.
I think we can use.
Yeah.
And there's other ones too. I'm not just singling out Halo, but that's just what we do.
I mean, I want to, I'm all about trying to encourage, and I think the rest of the board, I'm sure you feel the same way. You want to encourage our students to be as active as possible. So, if we have the facilities, we need to see how we can allow our students to access those facilities. So yes, if you can bring that information back, that would be great.
Sure.
All right, thank you. Any other
Teresa, you
questions? or
getting all
comments?
that down over there? Okay. All right. We'll get it back for you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, moving on to item number D, Safer School Committee presentation. Dr. Jim Markley.
We entered into a partnership about 3 years ago with some of our community partners around safer schools, and ways to look at reducing suspensions, ways at looking at students who are referred to juvenile court. And part of that task force recommendation was to come back to the board on a regular basis and make a presentation of some of the things that have happened. And that's why Jay Corpening, our district court judge, is here with us tonight. We're going to share some of that data. We will also be renewing this agreement very shortly, so it'll be coming forward to you for approval. So I'm going to turn this over to Jay, and I'll come down with Jay, and we'll work through some of this.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Pleasure to be here with you. It always is. I'm going to actually make two reports, and I'm not going to dive into a whole lot of detail on either. You've got the Safer Schools Task Force report in your materials. I commend it to you. I'll give you some background on it. But first, I wanted to share just a word about the Methodist Church, because I'm old enough to have historical perspective in this community a little bit. When my 35-year-old started kindergarten at Winter Park Elementary School, there was already an established relationship between Wesley Memorial Methodist Church and Winter Park Elementary School. There were volunteers that came into that school every week to teach reading 30 years ago, and they're still at it. So, Safer Schools Task Force report first. December 2012, Newtown, Connecticut was struck by a tragedy. Sandy Hook Elementary School. Our community was gripped by that crisis. Our district attorney, Ben David, convened a school safety summit early in 2013. Out of that safety summit, Ben asked to create a Safer Schools Task Force and asked me to head it up. And so we brought a group of folks together from education, community, law enforcement, some folks with some expertise, and spent over a year looking at issues of school safety, and at the end made a report to the schools and to the county about school safety. One of the interesting things about what we found in 2013, early 2014, was that relationships are at the heart of school safety. Now, after we did our report, there's been a legislative committee to look at school safety, right? And recently the governor's select committee released its school safety report. Most of their stuff is in our report from 2013.
The legislation that you look at talks about more SROs, more folks in the schools, and those are things that as a board you've done. Those are things that our county commissioners have funded over the past several years.
So in our update, we looked at four major categories, with mental health and special needs of students being number one. It has to be. One of the experts that we worked with was a guy named Larry Bonney, retired FBI agent, a behavioral specialist, investigated every major school shooting back to Texas Tower when he was with the FBI. Larry told us, if you don't take care of what's inside the walls, you'll never protect the school. So making sure that we take care of the mental health and special needs of students. One of the things that when we looked at it, this policy was actual policy. The policy has since been rescinded, but good news is that our school district is still working at implementing this, even though it's not policy. So looking at having mental health services available to all of our students, as of this budget year with the county adding 3 mental health positions in the health department-based therapist, all of our schools have access to mental health services either through that program or through community partnerships with a number of community partners that offer those services. So that's great growth. I'll share with you that the 3 positions that the county approved were approved after we released a draft of this report recommending that. We actually reconvened last year at the request of the county manager and the chairman of the board of commissioners because they wanted to know what role they needed to play in helping to solve some of these problems related to school safety. So one of the things that we did recommend was a new piece that we don't have, and that's to have a behavioral specialist support team to actually provide direct services in schools to create behavior plans, monitor those behavior plans. Youth mental health first aid training is a conversation that I've been having with the superintendent, and Ben David's been having with the superintendent and others for probably 4 years now. Having the folks who are dealing with the kids who are in crisis and dealing with them every single day to be trained to recognize the signs of crisis. Challenge is it's an 8-hour training. We have limited time available, but our Safer Schools Task Force believes that needs to be a priority. We're building led, right? But in terms of the board and superintendent's office getting behind it, we feel like that needs to be a priority. We're already using mobile crisis. We recommended increased mobile crisis use. That's being done, and we now do have school-based mental health services at least part-time in every school. Second major category was school climate and discipline. That's part of the EYES grant that is being implemented in middle school now that connects to school climate. We want kids to feel safe at school. We want it to be a welcoming environment. All of us do. So some recommendations related to school climate. It doesn't work, and then it works like crazy. So one of the things that we recommend is staffing student support services roles at national standards. There are national standards for staffing ratios. We've recommended since 2014 that we staff those positions, school guidance counselors, school social workers, school nurses at national school psychologists at national standards. We've moved closer over the last few years in getting to some of those standards, which is the good news. But one of the things that we're encouraging is that this board and the Board of County Commissioners engage in strategic conversations about what that future looks like and how that load might be able to be shared. We think that it needs to be an ongoing conversation instead of, for example, the roundtable last year was called together by Chairman White after Parkland. It shouldn't require a crisis for us to come together and make decisions about making things safer on a long-term basis, while, as Dr. Holliday pointed out in some of our meetings, making sure that what we do is sustainable, because it's got to be sustainable. It can't just be a reaction. Oh, let's hire 15 new resource officers, for example, and then, oh my God, you see how much that is in the budget. So it's got to be sustainable as we look, and that's why we feel like strategic conversation between this board and the county commissioners is significant.
The stat I saw today that was probably the most disturbing was a national stat. 1 million kids are in schools that have SROs, but no counselors or social workers in those schools. Now, we are fortunate that that is not in Hanover County. We've got not only our own social workers and counselors, we've got the WAT clinics in all 4 of our high schools that provide mental health. We had one person, we were dealing with a situation in one of our schools today where the WAT clinic was a great partner. So we also have school-based mental health provided by the county, that place that they don't have. But the idea that there would be schools with no counselors or social workers is a truly scary statistic.
So as a perspective, the kids that I deal with in my delinquent caseload have to take a risk and needs assessment when they do intake in juvenile court. Number one need of children for the last 10 years, psychological services that are coming to me. Number one for the last 10 years. And so we've got to continue to make that a priority. These two recommendations connect to the next part of my presentation in part. We really do need to look at alternatives to suspension. Suspension needs to be about a safety issue. Children don't see suspension as punishment. They don't. Children also don't remember why they were suspended 5 days later or 10 days later, and some of that's the brain science of it. The educational research shows that suspension does not change behavior for the better. That's the educational research. So looking at that, taking a hard look at what we can do around suspensions, but then also we recommended looking at the discipline policy. That's something we've had conversations about since we did enter into our interagency agreement because of the changes in how we were sending kids to court. That's a need that we see that we're recommending to you. And just once again, this is a group that that came together at the request of Ben David and then reconvened at the request of the county. I'm not asking for anything tonight other than to make this report information available to you, and then we're going to continue to work. Just a brief second on physical security and emergency preparedness. This is something the schools have done a great job. When we first started our work, Ben asked us to convene a threat assessment team, and then we realized we weren't in the business of threat assessment. Sergeant Granda in the back and others are trained to do threat assessments, not us. So then it was suggested we be the Safe Schools Task Force, and then as we started to do our work, we realized our schools are safe. And so then it's about being safer, and what can we do to make schools safer.
And I would just add on that, we're in the middle of, we've just awarded our contract for a review of our school safety procedures, and they're going to be beginning that, they'll be beginning that work very shortly. We'll present to our principals on Thursday's meeting. I've given you some information about that in your board packets, and Eddie's been working to put that in place. So that report, that reevaluation of our school safety, the physical piece, and will begin very shortly.
And there's some data gathering that goes on with school plans, some very technical stuff that gets uploaded, so that law enforcement has access to that, and they're doing that, which was great news. Our last category was substance abuse and gang intervention. We can't have a conversation in today's world with talking about drugs, right? Heroin's killing us. We're seeing drugs in the schools. We're seeing drugs everywhere, and so we've got to be responsive to that. We're doing a lot of good things. Our SROs are already referring to gang task force. They're already referring to Elements, which is an alternative to sending kids to court that connects to that gang world. We do recommend ongoing education for our school staffs about both substance abuse and gang involvement. So that's it for that presentation. If you can call it the next one. And then if there are questions, I'll just answer questions at the end. I'm trying to be mindful of time, but thank you for this opportunity. So Dr. Marco and I have been working on school justice partnership in New Hanover County since 2012. We actually started conversations about it before Sandy Hook, and then the work got derailed a little bit by the Safer Schools Task Force. But then we began working in earnest in 2014 and spent about 18 months collaborating across systems to come up with what we called an interagency agreement to address the handling of school-based offenses and trying to find a way to keep kids in court and out of school. We were successful. We did sign an agreement in November 2015.
First one in the state.
First one in the state. There are 40 different states that have this kind of work going on. North Carolina is working on going statewide right now. Our New Hanover County model is the model for the state. It's connected to the Raise the Age legislation. So it started as a local grassroots effort in building relationships, and now we're working on building relationships across the state. I'll be in Pitt County and in Pamlico County over the next 2 weeks working with groups just like ours, trying to help them build relationships and find a way to cooperate across systems to make things better for kids. Zero tolerance was one of the reasons that this work got started years ago. Zero tolerance policies in North Carolina were outlawed in 2011 by the General Assembly. So that policy hasn't existed, but then we found practices did exist in places. And finding consistent ways to respond to behavior eliminates zero tolerance. Disproportionate contact has been an ongoing problem. You guys know your data. It shows what it shows. It has shown what it showed. That's another reason for doing this, because when we respond to behavior intentionally, to every child's behavior intentionally, and the same way we can reduce disproportionate contact. And that was the experience that Clayton County, Georgia had over a period of about 7 or 8 years when they did the first school justice partnership in America. And they were able to dramatically reduce their disproportionate contact just by being intentional in their response. This is also consistent with brain science, right? We've been treating adolescents as adults for years, expecting them to be adults when they can't be. Their brains won't let them. You know, for us guys, it's worse, right? You know, frontal lobe fully developed about 26. My wife suggested the other day 64 was a little early. But frontal lobe, impulse control, appreciation of risk-taking behavior, appreciation of long-term consequences, their brains won't let them. But we've been expecting more of them for years, and so we actually, this fits with brain science. We built a graduated response model, which fits very nicely with our PBS model. We were using PBIS to respond to instruction, but not so much to behavior, but it's a behavior model too. And so we built a graduated response model to respond to that behavior. Some of the keys were we were able to come to an agreement, and part of that agreement was to try to keep kids in court, in school and out of court. Part of it is to deal with behavior when and where it happens. So you guys are parents. I'm betting none of you scheduled discipline for your children 60 or 90 days away from the event that happened. I'm just betting. Well, that's what we've been doing for years. We send them to court, and it's 60 or 90 days, and that teenage brain, they don't even remember, right? As parents, we try to deal with behavior when and where it happens, and that's what we've been trying to model with this agreement. Treating adolescents like adolescent behavior instead of trying to criminalize it, while maintaining a safety-first mantra. Safety has to be first, and through our agreement, we've made safety exclusions so that law enforcement discretion is unfettered. When there's a safety issue, then the school administrators are not fettered by this when there's a safety issue. The discretion comes first when it's about safety.
Yeah, we're not police officers, so we're not going to try to tell the police what's a crime and what's not a crime. That's not the crime job. We choose to do that. Conversely, though, we're then saying that he's not an assistant principal. He shouldn't be doing school functions that assistant principals do in their schools. And so delineating what those things look like. And we created JZero as sort of an outgrowth of this, a short-term suspension center. Because the city police sat with us one time and said, when you suspend a kid, they're home, often home by themselves. Is it something we can do to keep them in school? And that's part of what we do with JZero. And it's really cool because today, I was talking to Krista, who goes over and checks on short-term suspensions. She canceled her morning appointment because for the first time in the existence of that program, there were no short-term 5 to 10 day folks who were assigned to that school today. So that's interesting data just on today that something we're doing in the school is working and those kids are staying in school.
And one of the things we're experiencing as a result of doing this work is mindset shifts among building administrators. We're finding building administrators who are looking for more and more creative ways to respond to behavior without putting the behavior out of school. I was listening to a couple of middle school principals, God bless every one of them, who at the school safety summit that the schools convened before the school year started. And Charlie Broadfoot from Rolling Gray said, why would I put a kid out of school when I can solve the behavior? That's a shift. We've got some old timers, Patrick McCarty down at Ashley, looking for new ways. It's really been fabulous to see, looking at new ideas like restorative practices. A number of our school leaders have adopted restorative justice models in their schools. We were able to connect the schools to that without cost. We brought some folks in from Raleigh to help, and Professor Kim Cook from UNCW continues to volunteer doing that. We're looking at reducing collateral consequences to kids. I did a presentation on school justice partnership models in Pender County last summer in anticipation of doing this work with Pender, and then Hurricane Florence hit. But I got a call this fall from a principal at one of the Pender high schools who had been at the presentation, and he said, so I've got a kid who graduated last year, great kid, great student, and wants to be in Air Force intelligence and has enlisted in the Air Force, enlisting in the Air Force. But he told the recruiter that at age 15 he'd been charged with getting in a fight at school. He went to teen court and it got dismissed. Recruiter said, I'm sorry, you're not eligible for Air Force intelligence anymore. We'll take you in the Air Force, but you're not eligible for intelligence. And the kid said, but it got dismissed. The recruiter said, I'm sorry. So the kid goes to principal and says, can you help me? Principal calls me because I was just talking about collateral consequences, right? Well, bells went off because at 15, they're not an adult in North Carolina. Soon, 17-year-olds won't be. But at 15, it would have gone to juvenile court, so he wouldn't have been arrested. But kid thought he'd been arrested. But I checked our records. No juvenile process, no adult process. I called the principal back and say, it was a direct referral to teen court. There was no arrest. Kid's in Air Force intelligence today. That's the kind of collateral consequence we're trying to avoid. Even if a kid just gets charged, it can be life-changing. And you'll see in a minute, most of the stuff that we're talking about, not sent into court, is very, very minor. Some of this is designed to interrupt the school-to-prison pipeline. We know that once kids get referred to court, it happens again, it builds and builds and builds. So this is designed to try to interrupt that. It's designed to create positive school climate because the kids are in school more. We see that in connection with graduation rates. You want to say a word about that?
Well, we've hit our highest graduation rate in the district's history, 86%. And I credit that to what happens in the school, to the work that these folks are doing, the mental health piece. I'm hoping with some work on our attendance policy, we can continue to do that. But it's that relationship piece here that the judge is talking about. You've got to know your kids so you can help them get across that. Because I've always said, a high school diploma in and of itself isn't anything except the first step on the ladder. But if you don't have a high school diploma, you can't even get on that ladder and get started.
So schools are safer. Our school resource officers are actually in school. They're not sitting down in the courthouse. And they're in school building relationships with kids, which is what it's really designed to. Yes, they're a safety factor, but they're there to help build relationships. And they're doing that in ways they've never been able to do before. Had a school resource officer tell me not long ago, he's been in the schools for more than 10 years, and he told me that now is his favorite time of his career because he feels like he's not running kids downtown on minor stuff all the time. He's able to work with them. He's able to build relationships. So just some data, some numbers for you. You can see the yellow line in the middle is when we signed our interagency agreement. You see an initial spike of kids referred, and that's, I think, because we started keeping better data at that time. But you can see the orange line has gone steadily down. We had a bump last year with Parkland and some other issues. We had lots of copycats last year after Parkland that the Sheriff's Department had to investigate. We had to take seriously, so we saw a little bump there. But you can see overall the numbers have gone down. Even as the reports have gone up, the percentage of kids referred to court by school resource officers has crashed. Down to only 24.5% of the kids referred to school resource officers going to court. I think that's awesome, especially when we're dealing with minor misconduct and we have an opportunity to change behavior. I think that slide is probably the benchmark of our success, and you can see that decline. Some of the non-court options, one of the things we had to create was a category for school action because the schools are managing behavior. They're actually treating it as a matter of discipline instead of punishment, and there's a difference. They're treating it as discipline and are being very, very effective at that. Our teen court numbers have gone steadily up since we signed the agreement. We've created the county-funded a misdemeanor diversion program as another alternative to arrest. It's a pre-arrest program to keep kids from getting tagged, especially in the months before raise the age. This just shows you the breakdown between felonies and misdemeanors. The felonies are the more serious things that are going to court, but you can see the overwhelming number of cases that are youngsters that the school resource officer are intersecting with are minor offenses. And then these are the most common for the last school year: affray or assault. And the cases, and let me just be clear, part of what we built into this agreement is that when people get hurt, it goes to court. You know, if it's two boys fighting over a girl who want to have lunch together the same day, they don't need to go to court, right? You can manage that. Disorderly conduct and affray statewide are number 1 and number 2 in referrals to court, and those are among the most minor offenses. So that's the work we've been doing. We have been meeting. We've come up with a new draft of our agreement. I think think Wayne Bullard has approved it. Wayne almost sent me over a cliff in 2015, but he didn't mean to. But questions that I can answer for you about either of those presentations, thank you again for your time.
I would just say that certain offenses, we're never going to back off. If you bring a weapon on campus, that's a police referral automatically. Serious drugs, heroin, and those things, that's going to be much more than just simply handled at the school. But we reduced those simple things, sending kids to court. It doesn't make any sense.
Judge, I would like to say, first of all, I appreciate everything that you've done. Last year, I think you brought us the $1 million bullying initiative that was.
That was kind of funny. We were sitting, he and I and Judy Stubblefield were sitting talking about our agreement in Charlotte. And the girl from Washington who ran that grant was sitting there. So we cornered her and bullied our way into a grant, so.
That's not exactly how that happened, but just saying. Yeah, that was our partnership, our success brought our team to Charlotte for a national training program, and the School Climate Center was there and represented and liked what they heard about us, and said that sounds like a district we want to work. So.
And we're just fortunate, to have you in this district with everything you've done with Safer Schools, with the juvenile prevention. I am sure that other LEOs wish they would have what we have here. So I really appreciate it. One thing I would ask is, for some of the other board members and the people that are here, can you explain a little bit about teen court, about the jury, about who actually is the prosecutor, defense, and how it's all involved?
Sure, thanks. Thanks for leaving me, buddy. So teen court is a restorative practice model of dealing with teenage offenses. We have a judge who's a volunteer judge, typically staffed by our public defender's office, some other volunteers that come in and do it. Our teen court program is overseen by Vantage Point, which used to be our alternative, whatever they were called before they were called Vantage Point, but they've overseen it for a number of years. They actually train students to fill roles as the lawyers in the room, the prosecutor and the defense lawyer. The students fill the role of bailiff and clerk. Students fill the role as jurors and actually decide punishment within a range of community service based on the offense that was referred. It requires the student to accept responsibility for what they've done as part of the interview process, the screening process, and then the jury, literally of their peers, listens and then decides on the punishment piece. One of the pieces of punishment is they're required to come back and serve on the jury.
If you want to see something neat, go spend a day watching teen court in action. It is a great process.
It's a fabulous program, and you've seen how the numbers have gone up. And we just did, they're funded through our JCPC funding. We just did program review, outstanding marks on what they're doing with that program. Really meeting the needs of kids. We've seen dramatic behavior. They do track recidivism. Recidivism numbers are very, very low.
My son served as a juror, and it was a real eye-opener for him. He came back and he said, "I can't tell you who I saw. Can't tell you anything about it, Mom." But it was very, but it was a very, I think, a very sobering experience, and it was very hard, I think, as a peer to judge your fellow student. But I think it's a good experience.
And they do sign an oath of confidentiality. That's real.
Yes.
And we've only had one breach of confidentiality in the last 15 years that I'm aware of.
Impressive.
Which, considering everything, is remarkable and shows how seriously these young people take it.
Yeah, Judge, I would just like to add my thanks. I do have a question, but first I did want to tell you, you're I'm one of your biggest fans. You're one of the heroes of this community. I foresee a day where a future board maybe even names a school in your honor. I really do. I have such respect and admiration and deep appreciation, as the entire community does, for your tireless efforts on behalf of our youth.
Well, thank you. I'm just lucky to be in a time and place when I get to schedule
impressive.
myself for work and then volunteer the places I want to volunteer, which is schools.
You did mention that suspensions were something that we really needed to look at continuing to reduce. And I was wondering just about our numbers. How many students did we suspend last year?
top of my head, I don't have a number, but it, Rick, we did, about any rough number?
It would be a very rough number. A very small number of children that we actually long-term suspend anyway, because generally when we long-term suspend, it goes into a disciplinary reassignment for a certain period of time. So it's technically not a long-term suspension. So we basically long-term suspend maybe a handful of children a year.
And what about short-term? Are those problematic as well?
So one of the nice things about Row is that still looks like an education piece instead of a at-home or on the streets piece, right? Which I was thrilled about, because lots of these kids aren't even at home, they're on the streets, right? And so the numbers, and I can't give you the number, I've seen the number, but the numbers are trending down.
A typical day, I mean, if you look at your monthly report, current enrollment at JZero, which are the students who would be disciplined reassigned or long-term suspended, they have anywhere between 40 and 60 who are there every day. And then the short-term folks, who are the 5 to 10-day folks, reassignments, can go from anywhere from today, which is 0, to about 20 or 30 on a typical day.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And that's middle and high school, because we don't, elementary students, we don't do long-term suspensions with.
All right, thank you very much. Enjoyed being with you tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Judge Corpening. And I want to thank everybody who's has served on the task force. It's a lot of work. All right, moving on to item number 9, superintendent's report.
Nothing tonight.
All right. Short and sweet. Item number 10, board chairperson's report. I do want to add one thing that is not on here. The invocation, as many of you may have noted, we are doing something different with the invocation. One thing that I wanted to do, and Ms. Adams was kind enough to help me with this, what we're going to start to do is inviting clergy from around the area to come and give the invocation. We think that that is a way of including our community in another way. And we want to thank again Bishop Rego Long from the Greater Morning Star Apostolic Church for being our first clergy member to come and give the invocation, but we will be reaching out to other members, other clergy in our community to do that. So we will be having somebody different, hopefully every board meeting. So again, thank you, Ms. Adams, for arranging that. All right, item number A, school showcase. Another piece that I've wanted to add, and the board had talked about in the past about adding under recognition of achievement, is something we do a lot about, and we do a great job about recognizing some of our community partners and some of the individuals in our school system that have won awards and have achieved some really great things. And I just thought it would be a great idea to also give the schools a chance to shine. So one thing that I wanted to try to add is something that we're calling School Showcase. We may rename it. That was just something we kind of threw out there, to give the schools a chance to tell their story. So what we're going to do is each board meeting we're going to have either 1 or 2 schools just do whatever they want to feature what they want to feature, possibly utilize our PR department to kind of tell what they want to tell about themselves. The first school that will be showcased next month is the Career Readiness Academy at Mosley. So next month you will learn all about being a Mosley Scholar. Mosley is a very interesting school. They have a lot of programs contained in one building, so we thought that would be a good place to start. So, anyway, I'm looking forward to that. Does anyone have any questions about that? I guess I'm supposed to ask. Anything? No? Any comments? All right. Moving on to item number B, House Bill 89. So everyone I think most people have heard about this bill. Back at the end of last year, I started talking to Representative Davis, and Representative Ted Davis has been a longtime supporter of CTEC. Back before CTEC was even CTEC, it was just an idea. And one of the things that we recognized was that with CTEC moving into the new facility, a lot of the funds that were going into that building were going into the infrastructure of that building. They weren't going to actually be going into the academies. So when I talked to Representative Davis, I asked him if he would be willing to support funding for the actual academies. CTEC, our career and technical high school, which was started in 2017, is what we're hoping it's going to be is a showcase for all of our career and technical education programs. And there are 4 academies that we're going to be starting, that we wanted to start with: health careers, residential and commercial construction, hospitality, tourism, and recreational, sports management, and public safety. And so what this bill would do is support the build out of those programs. And it's very, very exciting that this has been proposed. It would be, I think, just a wonderful opportunity for our students to be able to access these spaces, and it would allow access to these spaces for our 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th graders. Once our middle school is built at that location, it would allow access to the middle school students. It could potentially allow access to community college students. So this could have such a broad reach. It's a real opportunity, and I'm just really grateful that Representative Davis stepped forward and sponsored this bill. So I just wanted to bring that to the public's attention, that is out there, and we're just really thrilled to have him beside it. And our other state legislators are also supportive of this bill. So that's about it. Does anyone have any questions, comments? No? And the school was very helpful in providing kind of the detail behind it. And it was proposed in February, which was declared by the state superintendent, Mark Johnson, as Career Pathways Month, which I thought was fairly appropriate. So, no, nothing?
When would, have you heard anything about how it's advancing, or when would we expect as a board to hear?
Still early in the process. It has not come to the floor for a vote yet. A lot of bills are still being drafted, and then they'll get into the appropriations portion probably in a couple of months. So it's one that it's been filed. We'll need to stay on top of it through our school board association, through our administrators association, and that large district consortium. We'll try to keep it as much in the forefront of the other folks up there as much as we can.
All right, that is it for my report, my inaugural report. Moving on to item number 11, committee reports. Item A, Williston Exploratory Committee update.
As this board's aware, in January, they received a proposal to do something different with Williston. At that point, it was to talk about making it an art school. The original intention of this proposal was to better serve the New Hanover County community, and specifically the Williston students in that community. As everyone knows, Williston is a great school, has been a great school, but is our lowest performing school, has our lowest attendance rates. And I felt that it was important to actually, instead of talking about this for 10 years, to actually try to do something to Williston to make it better for our students. Initially, I would say that the New Hanover County community was extremely supportive of that idea. We did several polls, whether they're on Instagram or Facebook, and an overwhelming majority favored doing something with Williston. But I think we all realized that we also needed to speak to the specific Williston community and get their thoughts on it as well. So that's why the committee was formed to evaluate this and get the opinions of the Williston community as well as Williston faculty to figure out what exactly they wanted or thought, or how they would want to move forward. So we've had 4 meetings, I believe, at this point, maybe 4 or 5 meetings at this point. Most recently, we met with some students at Williston. We had, I want to say, 8 to 10 committee members there. I think it's probably 10. We had 30 students. Each pod we broke up into dual committee member pods, and each pod had, I think, had 5 students. Those students were selected by the Williston staff. I believe that most of them volunteered to be on the committee, and then the Williston faculty assigned those students to the individual pods, and we heard from those students as to what the cool things about Williston were, what they thought some negatives about Williston were, what their thoughts about a 612 school were, how we could actually do better at Williston to make it a better experience, better academic experience, and more importantly, an educational experience where they're looking towards their future. So as a committee, that was our last meeting. At the end of that committee, we kind of went around the room, shared our experiences. Each individual pod or each individual group of committee members explained what the students said, and it was a really interesting conversation, I thought. We got some interesting information. But at the end of that, we asked the committee members how they wanted to proceed. And whereas, as I said, I think a vast majority of the New Hanover County was in favor of doing something with Williston, maybe changing it up, maybe not an art school, but maybe having an arts component, a vocational component, a business component, and making a 612 application school. It was apparent that the Williston community, including the faculty, were satisfied with Williston as a traditional middle school. We talked about resources, and numbers were thrown out. Williston, I believe, for per pupil, gets between 20 to 30% more money than any other middle school. So from a money standpoint, the board has recognized that it is important to put resources into Williston, and they've done that. We had a teacher on the committee, and she would kind of give us the perspective of what was going on in the school, and she said that there are resources here. There's community associations that come, and they're very prevalent in the school. So just based on our discussion as a board, we knew it was important to not only have the New Hanover County support, which I think we would, but more specifically, we would need the Williston community support to change a school from what the traditional middle school is to the 612. And at this point, I think that it's fair to say that the Williston community wants to keep it as the traditional middle school and are satisfied with the school as it is. So based on those discussions that we've heard on that committee, it would be my recommendation at this point to suspend that committee and, again, eventually bring the focus to redistricting, because ultimately we're going to have to do that anyway. So that would be my consideration, or that would, I guess, be my recommendation for the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Whitman, and thank you for your work on the committee. Ms. Adams, do you have anything to add?
I second everything Mr. Wortman said. I appreciate the feedback that we received from the students, from the alumni, from the community in general. There were some really great conversations had at many different levels, and if anything, I hope that this process proves this board is listening to our teachers, to our students, and to our community, and that's important to us. It was a great dialogue, and we look forward to having more dialogue. And we 100% support Williston, I know, as a board, and we want to continue to support you in whatever ways we can to best help our students.
One thing I would mention in the committee, just so everyone realizes, just because we're doing, suspending the committee doesn't mean that I think we should stop looking at better programs to put not only in Williston, but really all of our schools. I mean, that's why I hope most of us are here. I know that's why I'm here, but starting a conversation about the Williston process and ways to improve the Williston, although I still agree it should be, I think that it should be a 6-12 school. I think that it's important to continue that conversation. I know there's a lot of passionate Williston people here. I think they would agree with me when I say that the conversation has started. So and I know Mr. Garcia got up here and said that the conversation started, but let's continue that conversation about looking at ways to continue to make Williston better. Because ultimately, I think that it's for the students is the reason why we're doing this, and it's the reason why y'all are advocating. So I appreciate y'all are advocating. I may not necessarily agree with everything that we said, but that's what the reason for the conversation was. So I do appreciate everything that y'all have brought to it.
And I hope everyone recognizes that, I know that the conversation was too that the way it was brought forward was sort of rushed. But I think the reason it was because we were getting ready to make a decision about redistricting. And so this board felt like it was willing to explore that idea first before we made a decision about redistricting. And we wanted to bring the community in. So while it may have seemed rushed, we really wanted to have input. And the way that we went about it was unprecedented. I don't think the community was involved in this way before. So I hope that you all do recognize that we were trying to draw you in. It may have seemed like, oh, we were throwing this out there, it was a done deal. It was never a done deal. It was always, let's put this idea out there and then talk about it. And so that's what this was all about, was talking about it and then seeing what happens. And having the new board brought the dialogue in a different direction, and that's kind of what was supposed to happen, because we have new people, new ideas, new ways of handling all of this. So again, I think that this was good. This was a learning experience for everyone. And as Mr. Wortman said, we're going to continue this. We're going to continue the dialogue. We're going to try to continue the outreach. And we're probably not always going to get it right with how we do it, but we're going to keep trying.
So, Madam Chair, do we need to take a vote? Because I think we voted to start the committee. I think we probably would need to take a vote to suspend.
Yes.
Committee.
So would someone
So
like to move?
I would, as the chair of the committee, I would move to suspend the Williston Exploratory.
I'll second that motion and add my gratitude and my thanks to Member Adams and Member Wortman. And just reiterate that, trust is so important in government, and, not just between the community and this board, but between board members. And, when I go out and say we're going to listen, it's because I trust that Member Wortman and Member Adams are going to listen as well. I really am proud of the work they put forward, and I thank them.
Yeah, I think, Ms. Adams, I forgot to thank you, but thank you too. Any other discussion? Oh, is there a second? You seconded, right, okay.
I would, just real quickly, I'd also like to thank the other members that were on the board. I know a couple of them are here. Hey, Ms. Warren. She's in the back there. But I appreciate, they're the ones that took the time out of their day. We were doing 3 o'clock meetings and 2 o'clock on last Monday. Take the time out of the day to voice their opinions, and we had some good discussions. So I do appreciate the time you put in.
Any other discussion? Okay, so you've heard the motion. All those in favor? Say
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion passes. Item number 12, consensus items. A, personnel, appendix E, Dr. Welmers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would request the board approve the personnel matters as presented.
All right.
So moved.
Heard the motion, there's a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The item is approved.
Madam Chair, before we move on, before Bobby walks out the door, I'd like to publicly recognize the work that Bobby did. You heard somebody earlier talk about our teachers afraid to talk. Bobby's not one. Bobby was part of a group we put together, John, was it 3 years ago, about young leaders that we sent off about 20 of our teachers to Ocracoke as part of that. And he's working on a school administration degree, I understand. He's an example of the young teachers in our district and the future leaders in our district. You may not always agree with him, but I love how he stands up for himself and for his students. Thank you, Bobby.
Item number B, budget amendment number 6, appendix F, Mary Hazel Small.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I request the board's approval of budget amendment, can't even talk, budget amendment number 6 as presented. Thank you.
All right, is there a motion?
So moved.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Item number 13, old business. Number A, or item A, 2019 summer school plan, appendix G, Dr. LaShawn Smith.
Yes, would ask the board's approval for this revision. Last month, I brought to, before the board, the initial plan. We have since had some additional conversations with high school principals, and they want to integrate summer testing into their existing summer school plan. They think that we'll have greater attendance on the part of students if we do this. So we're asking for the board's approval to this change of dates for our traditional high schools.
I think that's a great idea. I think it's a really good idea.
Very practical.
Yes.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
I think we just did.
How much of a difference is this?
They will actually be receiving some additional days of instruction because it's already scheduled time that teachers are going to be in place.
Okay.
So it will definitely be to the benefits of the student.
Okay. Even better. All right, so there's a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item B, 2019-2020 curriculum course guide, appendix H, Dr. LaShawn Smith.
Yes, would ask the board's approval of this addendum to the curriculum course guide. Here, we are adding some additional courses specifically to Ashley High School, and we do have Principal McCarty here with us this evening if you have some specific questions for him. It
He
would
is an
be-
old hat, so he knows all the answers.
Yes, yes, truly. It is AP seminar and AP research. Unfortunately, this information was not available at the time, excuse me, to be included in the initial presentation. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Holliday. For the initial presentation of the curriculum course guide, also, we are adding some additional courses specific to New Hanover High School in reference to Mandarin Chinese. We're expanding that offering next year as our students who are currently in our immersion program at Gregory possibly matriculate to New Hanover High School. We want them to be able to continue their studies in Mandarin.
Will that be an online course or will that be an actual?
It will be face-to-face.
We will participate to,
Good.
for a second Mandarin teacher.
Yes, that is correct.
And-
Great.
And just remind you, as we get to opening Blair, I would love to expand our immersion options and do Mandarin Chinese as an option for Blair once we move those kids back to, move the Blair kids back in Porter's Neck as a second program, possibly in Mandarin, so.
And that would help us with class size too, right?
Yep.
So we would keep Mandarin at Gregory, but then add it
Oh, yeah,
as
Mandarin
an
at Gregory is a
option.
middle school second language for those who have gone through, and they, once you've got that second language, that additional language becomes easier. But it's, I'll roll that plan out down the road, sorry, I'm getting ahead of
All
us here.
All right. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion, any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to new business. Item A, audit contract with Cherry Beckert LLP, Appendix, is that I? Mary Hazel Small.
Thank you. I request the board's approval to renew our audit contract with Cherry Beckert in the amount of $56,000. This is year 5 of a 5-year agreement. Attached is the contract itself as well as the engagement letter.
So this will go back out to bid next year. Okay.
All right. Do I hear a motion?
Moved.
Any discussion?
Just to clarify, this was the group who presented, 2 months ago?
Correct.
On our, okay.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number B, consideration of bids for C-Tech High School Phase 2 renovations, Appendix J, Eddie Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bids were received on February 19th for C-Tech High School Phase 2 renovations. And as you said earlier, the project consists of a lot of building infrastructure. We will be updating and repairing, replacing a lot of building systems and bringing new technology into the classrooms. This project also includes permanent repairs for damages from Hurricane Florence. While the immediate response was to do the emergency repairs and dry out the building and collect everything, we held off on the permanent repairs and included them in this project so that we would get better prices. The recommendation tonight is to award the contract for construction to Yule Incorporated in the amount of $1,062,347. As I mentioned, that total contract includes $98,079 for Hurricane Florence repairs.
Eddie, I see it's scheduled to be completed in August.
Yes, sir. We were, with College Park moving into their new facility, we were actually able to accelerate this project a little bit. The original plan was that the modular buildings that were used for College Park would be used for C-Tech through the end of the calendar year, which would be through their first semester. But I hate to say one of the benefits of a hurricane, but as it worked out, it did in a positive way affect our schedule. We're able to move into College Park early. We'll be moving them from Holly Shelter and Castle Hayne over spring break. And the modular buildings that were at the Sidbury Road facility are now gone. And by accelerating these renovations and completing them in August, it will allow C-Tech full use of the building.
That's a positive development.
How much are we gonna have to fight to get the $98,000 back? The hurricane repairs.
Well, we'll probably fight the insurance company, but we'll have better luck with the FEMA folks.
So this is gonna have to go to FEMA.
Yeah, because the Sidbury site is within a floodplain, we have a high deductible with DPI, but we are submitting that, and I feel pretty confident. We had an inspection, let's see, last week. It was a long day, But we had an inspection with FEMA, and I feel pretty confident that whatever DPI doesn't cover, that they will.
Okay. That's good to know. All right. Do I hear a motion on item number B?
So moved.
Second.
Second, there's a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item is approved. Moving on to item number C, Wilmington Early College's Cooperative Innovative High School Renewal Agreement, Appendix M, Dr. Rick Holliday.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. We ask that you approve this renewal of the agreement that we have to keep Wilmington Early College High School, one of the top high schools in the state of North Carolina, open and functioning as a cooperative and innovative high school, which allows us to deviate from calendar law and access funding that's available through this legislation. And as I said, this has been one of the most successful high school programs in the state, along with Isaac Bear. And we're really proud of our early college program. So we just ask you to please renew this agreement so that we can keep on as business as usual at WEX.
Move for approval.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is approved. Thank you, Dr. Holliday. Moving on to item number 15, correspondence. Is there any correspondence that anyone would like to share?
Did you accidentally summon me?
I did.
Yes, sir.
God. It never works when I want it to, and that was really weird.
Might have had some correspondence.
Nice way to,
I would
Anyone
ask,
other than my phone want to share it?
I would ask for just a quick update. Now we are moving in a different direction, and I feel like we have to move with relative speed. And so I would ask that the board consider, where it wants to go right away with regards to redistricting. I guess it's something we always just sort of, we can't slow roll it. It's time to make a decision, middle schools and high school, or middle schools and elementary schools. And I would just like to know what the plan is moving forward.
Do you want to talk about
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to make a suggestion. Spoke to some folks in counties who have gone through this, and we've used our process in the past, but I think it's time we bring in somebody from the outside. I think that given all of the history and the fact that we went spent a year and a half and we've changed directions, there are companies out there, and Eddie's worked with one of the companies that will come in, do the mapping, do the meetings for you, and create the maps and give you suggestions based upon what you as a board give them for input.
Okay.
So I think it's time to have somebody else facilitate that. I think we'll get better results. Eddie, you want to talk about the company that I'd like the board to give me permission to contact?
Well, we've the school system has actually been working with one of them for quite some time that does our demographics, Jerry McKibben. And Jerry's partner his name is Matt Cropper. They do redistricting all over the nation. They're in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and have done a lot of work in this area as well. I've known them through different school associations for years and years, and I think they do. I've been to numerous seminars and presentations. I think they do a really good job, but I think you'd also enjoy working with them.
They just completed Cabarrus County. They're working with another county here in eastern North Carolina. The name escapes me at the moment. But they've done work with Wake and other large districts in the past. So I would ask that the board put together a small committee, let these folks come in, make a presentation. We'll also see if there are others out there who want to come in and have a conversation with us. This is also, I mean, it's tragically, we lost one of the folks who, our own folks, Marion, who does a lot of the mapping for us. So I think having an outside person would fill in some of that gap. Anita does a great job, but she's only one of the 2 people who are on that team. So the board will give me a group, we'll start the process.
I think if you look at the website for Cropper, it's Cropper GIS.
Yes.
It's a very good website, tells a lot about the company, and they take your principles around redistricting, which Cabarrus counties were very similar to ours, and they factor that into what they do. So I think that's also very important.
They will also do your meetings for you, structure, and collect the feedback.
Right, now, the principles and the guidelines, they were created under the other board, and it's
Correct.
been in for a year and a half, and still things are stalling. So, wouldn't that be a first step if we were to create new ones at this point because of the stalling and the fact that the confusion is?
I would say there's 2 steps. If you want an outside person to come in, you do that. And then you sit with them as a board and talk about what you want for your guidelines.
Yep.
How is that spelled, by the way? Cropper, C?
Eddie, Cropper.
Okay, good, just like it sounds, okay.
Cropper.
Yeah.
Then you definitely see this as a way to expedite the process.
That'd be
I think
good.
so. I think because we spent a year and a half and there was so much back and forth, you've got a brand-new board, and folks from that old piece, bringing in an outside facilitator, I think may take some of the animosity out of that, and
Agree.
they become the lightning rod. If you got questions, you can yell at them instead of each other.
Tim, I don't think if we're gonna do this, I don't think we need to put a committee together. I think the intent is to not have to do that, allow someone from the outside to do all the work and
All right.
put them together. So I don't think there would be a need for a committee.
Would you like us to bring them to, see if they can come to our next board meeting?
We could be the committee. You know, this is the.
That'd be great. Do we have an idea on price? Is this something that's really, gonna hit us?
Good question.
It would, there is a cost. But I think at this point, if you want to get this done in the time frame you need to, it's an expense that, that you're gonna have to consider. So we'll ask them to bring some prices as well.
Prices, timelines, what.
Prices and timelines.
And what they actually do.
Yes.
Great.
That would be a good start.
All right, so with your permission, Mr. Anderson will begin the communication process.
I will.
Thank
Thank you.
All right. Any other correspondence?
Just a request for an update from Wayne on the student drivers, 18-year-old drivers, trying to alleviate some of this problem with transportation that I get an email on every day. Have you looked into that?
No, I have not. I don't think anybody asked me to, but I'll be glad to.
Yeah, I'm curious as to the legality of having 18-year-old
Okay.
students drive a route in the morning time.
Okay.
I don't know if we can employ our students. I don't know if there's some legality in that.
I'll be glad to check on that and let everybody know.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else?
As you're leaving, Tabitha has your scholarship binders for Thursday's meeting. Make sure you grab that.
Thank you. And if you can, everyone, make sure to take a look at that. We do have 4 questions that were given to the applicants, and there is one question that is, that the students will be asked at that time, but it's very helpful for everyone to have reviewed the information beforehand.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I had one more. You had mentioned a student representative for this board. Is there an update on that? Are we moving forward with that?
That's the board's desire, and if you got suggestions, because last meeting we had 3 or 4 different formats for that, I'd be interested in see which way you want to go with that.
I would like to put that on the agenda for next month if possible, and try to have somebody in place for the fall.
Perhaps, Dr. Markley, when you have your student advisory group, ask those students how they would like to go about it.
All right.
Why?
Is that acceptable to everyone?
Yeah,
Yeah,
good
absolutely.
idea.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
okay. All right. All right, announcements. The Title IX meeting of the first Title IX meeting of the New Hanover County Board of Education will be this Thursday, March 7th, 2019, at 2:30 PM in the Board of Ed Center, right here. And we'll be in this room, is that right here?
Yeah,
Okay, in the big room,
big room.
okay. The New Hanover County Board of Education will hold a special meeting on Thursday, March 7th, 2019 at 4:30 PM in the Board of Ed Center. The only item on the agenda is a closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318 11A12. The New Hanover County Board of Education will attend Best Foot Forward on Friday, March 8th, 2019 at 7 PM in the Wilson Center at Cape Fear Community College. For those who haven't been at the Wilson Center, it's really amazing. The students do a tremendous job. So I hope everyone can come.
Best show in town.
Yeah. That's a tough ticket to get. The Budget Development Committee of the New Hanover County Board of Education will meet on Tuesday, March 12th, 2019 at 4 PM in the Board of Ed Center, right here. The Policy Committee of the Board of Ed will meet on Tuesday, March 19th at 3 PM, right here in the Board of Ed Center. The Budget Development Committee of the New Hanover County Board of Ed will meet on Tuesday, March 19th at 4 PM, also at the Board of Ed Center here. And the next regular meeting of the Board of Ed is scheduled for Tuesday, April 2nd at 5:30 PM, again, right here at the Board of Ed Center. So lots of meetings scheduled. If there's nothing else, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.